Evening, everyone. I'm Kathy Hester and welcome to my kitchen. Tonight we're going to do something kind of special. I think it's perfect for New Year's Eve, because we know we're going to make some black-eyed peas for New Year's Day, right? We'll talk more about that later. But it's vegan fondue, and in fact it's not even that terribly bad for you. It's no added oil, and we'll talk about some SOS versions of this that we could do as well. So it's really a dish that's suited for anyone. Go ahead and let me know, say hi, let me know you're here, how the weather is. I know that it takes a little while for this to replicate all over the interwebs. So I thought we'd start. I hope you guys see that I broke out my best fondue set for you. And what I've already done is I've lightly steamed some baby carrots and quartered some baby potatoes, because those are going to be so good in my fondue. And if you can hear behind, oh, there we go. Hi Mike. Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed the tamale recipe. And if you guys are looking for a tamale recipe to make that is oil-free, go to plantbasedinstantpot.com, and up at the top at the right or down at the bottom there's a little magnifying glass. Type in tamales and you too can have my no oil pumpkin tamale recipe. And it even has Sandra Gutierrez's seal of approval, which makes me really happy. Oh, Apple, yay! And Apple says fondue and that I'm the best. Actually, what's really the best is my cool Harvest Gold fondue set. So, and we've got the fire started, and Cheryl found we have one of those little fire things that go under this. I forget what they call it. And we're going to do the whole fondue thing. I don't have a little like ski sweater, and it's like 60 degrees or 55 degrees. So, but I'm pretending I'm wearing a little ski sweater, and I'm at a chalet, which I've never been to, and I don't ski. I would like to go to a ski lodge to like hang out, have vegan cocoa and vegan fondue. So I guess being at my own house is good enough. Hi Helene, and not only that, you guys, just in case you ever wondered, when the world comes back, I have two of these, so I can do a cheese fondue, vegan of course, and a chocolate dessert fondue, because I got a recipe for that, but we'll do that another day. Hi Rondalyn, it's wonderful to see you here. And ooh, Windsor is nippy. I'm kind of missing that. Like, I even feel like it should be dark outside and it's not quite dark yet. Apple says it's a gorgeous fondue set. I know. We actually haven't pulled these out probably since we've moved here. So it's been like, oh my gosh, like 7 years since we've used them. I've been kind of like low renting the fondue. We just put it in a little pot and eat it in front of the TV. And what's happening in here is that I'm toasting some vegan gluten-free bread, which is char baguette. It is not SOS friendly, so but if you're vegan gluten-free, it's a good one to do. It's pretty soft and it's not cheap. None of the vegan gluten-free anything is cheap. And then I have some leftover tofu that I air fried. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to cut up some apples. Yay, fondue! And Helene said I had her at fondue. Fondue had me too. And Rosa from Ontario. Awesome, you guys. Well, welcome. I thought, okay, so before I got on this live, I was listening to Spotify, as I am apt to do. And of course, I had some Tom Jones going, because the last time we had a big fondue party, we were in our other house before this, and so we had a little electric fire log, so I had those going. We had a Tom Jones compilation playing, and we all wore 70s outfits. And I had a friend who made homemade Tom Collins mix. Well, I'm kind of not wanting to do any of the alcohol right now. And so I thought this would be a perfect time to show you guys these two while we're at it. Is that this company sent me some mocktails. It's called the Mocktail Club. Let me get that a little closer. So there's a Capri Sour, which sounds perfect, a Manhattan Berry, Bombay Fire, and Havana Twist. So I'll just kind of read you what's in here. So the Capri sour has pomegranate, cranberry shrub, lemongrass, agave, and caffeine-free tea. So we may be making some mocktails up too later on. And like this one, blackberry, pear shrub, ginger, agave, and caffeine-free tea. So these are really pretty clean. Let me see. This one has monk fruit juice concentrate in it. This one has agave and monk fruit. Ooh, this one has some black tea, so I might have to watch that for the caffeine. But you could also make something like this. So I thought, and the Havana twist is kind of like cucumber and mint shrub, cardamom and cloves. And Bombay fire is pomegranate and chili peppers. So let's try one of these. Hey Jeremy and Rosa. I may have already said hello, Rosa, so I apologize if I did that twice. And Jeremy, it's so good to see you. I know. So this is what I wanted to show you with these guys is that people are starting to create some really tasty things for people who don't drink. And I think whenever I have a party, I try to make a mixer that's just as good with or without alcohol, because it's none of your business why people don't want to drink, but you should always provide something for them. And what I think is very interesting is these are mostly shrub based, which is kind of like a vinegar. I'm going to try this Capri Sour. And I thought we'd try it here. Ooh, it smells really good, y'all. You really can smell the cranberry and pomegranate, a little lemongrass. You could make something like this too. And so I have these cute little Santa glasses. And actually little holiday glasses. I'll show you these. Can you guys, I don't know if you can see them or not. Yeah, there was a little pop-up bar that does Christmas stuff. Or, well, I think they call it Miracle something or other. And so I thought this would be how our 70s party can start. I'm just going ahead from the smell of it and assuming that Cheryl will want some too. There is some sediment in the bottom. It's probably from the shrub and some of the tea. And this way I get a treat while we're talking too. Let's move things so I won't spill. That's the most important thing, right? Now the fondue actually isn't going to take a lot of time to make. So cheers to the new year. Let's go ahead and get ready. Oh, this is really, really delicious. The pomegranate, the cranberry with a little bit of lemongrass, that's definitely very, very tasty. So the sour isn't very prominent, but I think this will be the perfect thing. It's a little bit tart. It's going to go with our fondue exactly the way we want it to. Okay, so there we go. Awesome. The fondue is super simple. So I gave you a link to a recipe, and this is a little bit enhanced on that recipe. So you may want to take notes. This is 1.5 cups of soaked slivered almonds. If you want to make it right now and you don't have any almonds that have been soaking, you can totally just heat them up on the saucepan. That works with all kinds of things, cashews too. I think I may have burned my baguette, but I have another one. So it's looking, that's not what the smoke is, it's just from the wetness of things. But yeah, it's not too happy. Then we're going to put about 1.25 cups of water, 1.5 cups of cooked white beans. So I used kind of a navy bean sort of hybrid thing going on. But you could use lima beans, you could use cannellini beans. It doesn't really matter. And I know Helene and I were talking earlier, and she was like, well, I don't have any, I might use kidney beans. And you could use kidney beans or garbanzo beans or another non-white bean, but it's not going to give you that perfect Swiss fondue look. So that's the only thing that's going to change. We're going to put 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. And Jeremy, I know that bothers your gout, so you could just leave it out. This just adds a little extra cheesy flavor. And here's a surprise ingredient, lactic acid. And I'll let you guys see that a little closer. Can you guys, there you go. And it doesn't have to be Druid Grove. Druid Grove's is marked explicitly vegan. It's from sugar beets. So even though we think of milk when we think of lactic, right, acid, and let me get the lid off. It's just this white powder. And we're going to put a teaspoon. And if you put this in your mouth, it doesn't taste like cheese, but it's kind of sour. It's kind of like citric acid, but a more middle flavor. Instead of citric acid, it's kind of like lemony and up higher. It's kind of medium, and it really gives you more of that bite that you would have gotten from dairy cheese. Hey, Linda and Hillary and Deborah, thank you guys so much for joining in. What we're doing is we're making vegan fondue. So get your chalet face on and your little toboggan. And what we've got in here is we've got 1.5 cups of slivered almonds. And again, if you just used regular almonds, that would be fine, but you're not going to get this perfect Swiss chalet color on your fondue. So that's up to you if it matters. 1.5 cups of a white bean, like a navy bean-ish. I'm using a Rancho Gordo heirloom bean that's similar to a navy bean. 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast and 1 teaspoon of vegan lactic acid. Now, if you don't have vegan lactic acid, you can totally skip this. You might want to go ahead and maybe grate some lemon rind or put a little bit of lemon juice in there. It's not a one-for-one thing, but you know, be as close as you can get. We're going to put some onion powder, garlic powder, and dry mustard. So 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of dry mustard. And Helene and I were talking earlier. She doesn't have dry mustard. Can anyone guess what I told her to do? To put regular mustard in there, just like you would, like hot dog, or if you have the Grey Poupon. It doesn't really matter. Because what we're doing is that, just like we're getting a little bit of that cheesy flavor from the lactic acid, and a little bit of extra umami from the nutritional yeast, the dry mustard gives us that ever so sharpness edge. So it's not going to give us like a full-on Vermont sharp cheddar sort of sharpness, but it adds a little bit that makes it seem a little bit more like a cheese. And Hillary says, do we find all these recipes in your cookbook? You can get, I actually posted the link to this. The origin of this recipe is from Vegan Slow Cooking for Two, or Just You. That was from the publisher. So they always like cute names. But it's a base recipe. I kind of added more nooch, more powders, the lactic acid, the miso that we're getting ready to add. So you'll get the base recipe there. This is going to be available on replay. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you. We appreciate you too, even though you're not here with me to say it all the time. But the one is just a little plainer. But you know what you could do with the plain one? You could go ahead and just jazz it up the way you want to jazz it up. But right now, with thought of my head, I think I put the dry mustard. I may have even just put, I don't know off the top of my head, but anyhow, you can see the base recipe, but again, I will probably say it again before it's all over. Oh, and Vanita says has never had fondue before. Back in my vegetarian days, we used to go to the melting pot. So this makes a basic fondue. So if you ever want to think about what in the world could fondue be beyond this, go look at the melting pot menus, because they'll have things like a shot of sherry or spinach they put in it, or different things like that. So you can get some really interesting ideas. So a tablespoon of miso. I'm using white miso. You use whatever miso you want. If you have a choice, the white miso will kind of help with the color, which is part of the mystique of this a little bit. So let me get this down, and you'll see why I built all of this other things up, because literally we're just going to blend this and we're pretty much done except for warming it up. So as fancy as we can make it, it's the perfect entertaining meal. So I'm going to let this go for a bit. See if it's smooth enough. I want you guys to see this from above. Look at that. Let's see if it'll actually go ahead. There we go. It's a little bit better. So for instance, it looks to me just like that kind of regular vegan fondue. I still notice some little bumps and lumps in here. So I'm going to let it blend a little bit longer. I'm going to scrape any of these little bumps and lumps. And if you don't do nuts at all, what you can do is you could probably use, I would start with maybe a 1/4 cup of rolled oats with some extra water. Blend that to make like a nice cream texture. And you could use that instead of almonds. It's not going to be exactly the same. However, if you can't have nuts, it's close enough, for real. Okay, and I'll address some questions and answers that I have over here. Okay. Yeah, and see that's a little bit smoother. I don't know if you guys can see the details on that or not. And so, like everything else, the first thing to do is not go, Kathy always knows best, and serve it to your friends, is to taste it. Now, I don't have any salt in here at this point. My salt's coming from the miso. So maybe I'll need to add a little more of it, or maybe I'll decide to add a little bit of salt. Oh God, I love this new recipe so much. And it totally could have a little extra sodium in there. So I'll leave it up to you to how you want to do yours. I think I'm going to add another 1/2 teaspoon of miso. It hit my salt just the right way just like a month ago using the same miso, but I think I just feeling salty today. Now, I did see that Helene said that the melting pot has a vegan menu now, and I've not seen that. I know! So if you guys saw me back here going, oh, that's what that was about. So I will have to check that. We'll have to see if they have gluten-free bread. They've always had tofu. And they also have these weird things that I never understood, which is like oil fondue that you put meat in. It just seemed gross all the way around. But know that you could do soy curls or seitan or something like that too. And Apple was saying, did I ever heat this up with some tapioca starch to make it stretchy? Because you totally could. And no, I have not. I decided this was good enough for me. However, you could warm it up with some. And in fact, so in the vegan cheese class we did a month or two ago, I actually make sliceable oil-free vegan cheese. And it has some tapioca in there. And so you could kind of do the same thing for sure, those of you who are in the class. Well, and Apple's saying, sorry, tapioca starch would need a milk to work, but it probably wouldn't do anything. But here's the thing, we made a milk. So that water and the almonds, so basically we made almond milk and added in, we made like almond cream, really. And then we added those beans in. So even when I was vegetarian, what I used to do is with cheese, I would still put beans. If you puree some beans in with that stuff, it makes it not separate, because that's one of the hard parts about fondue is that it can separate. Let me get it over here. We'll pour some in. So it should still work, because in fact, this is the basic way. If you make the oil-free cheese with cashews, this is exactly how you make it. And it does become stretchy when you heat it. You would have to heat it. What I'm going to do, since everything's kind of slightly warm just from all the blending, is we're going to finish heating it up in here with our little sterno. That's it, with our sterno. Let's see if I miss it. Yeah, tapioca flour and tapioca starch is kind of the same thing in the US. So, and you guys can kind of see this come out. I think it'll be nice to watch from the side, and then we can see how, even though it is very much an almond dip at this point, it's so thick, and you could make yours thinner if you wanted. And I think if you wanted to do, make it stretchy and use tapioca starch, you would need to make it a little bit thinner than I do. And I've also frozen this and had it work just fine too. And in fact, probably after I get off this live, I'm going to take out some in the so that we can put it away and not eat this many. Almonds is a little much to eat, but we're going to dip all the yummy goodness in there. Let you guys see what that looks like above. There we go. Isn't that nice? I've got some stuff here. So, like, this is just a steamed carrot. I kind of like it with a little bit of extra miso. And so we also got some potatoes. Of course, you want to demo me eating a potato too, don't you? It's just such a treat. I mean, it used to be, when Cheryl and I first got together, that was kind of our like fancy place to go, was, or one of our fancy cheesy place to go was, why did I just forget the melting pot? I seriously, you guys, I wanted to call it the Big Dipper. I don't know what's wrong with me. Evidently something. And Helene has just put in the link to Melting Pot. And Mike says, any advice on what containers folks are using to freeze these days? Oh, there's no basic questions, and that's perfectly fine. And hi, Marilyn, and good afternoon to you. Happy Fondue Day. Mike, I end up using, for this, I use a lot of glass containers with the Super Seal tops. So this is probably something that I would use to put this in. We were using some plastic stuff, but we were finding our freezer freezes really, really hard. And then when it's over full and it falls out, it busts up the container. And oddly enough, the glass fares better. So I've been doing that. We've been trying out some different reusable, sealable freezer bags. And they're very hard to clean, depending on what you put in them. And if you maybe forgot, left some vegetables in there, way too long, they smell. So we're trying to figure out some good ways to deal with that. So that's something else that I'm looking at. And Apple says the Big Dipper is a great name for a dips restaurant. I think there might be something called like the Big Dipper in Durham. There was another fondue place for a while. But Mike, I hope that helps you a little bit. What I would do really is I would go on Amazon, look for freezable containers, reusable freezer containers, and look at reviews. And take off like 5 of the good ones and 5 of the bad ones, and just kind of look in the middle. And if most people are pretty happy, that's probably okay. It seems like 2020 is the year of scathing reviews. So if they're upset that something fell out and burst, they might say that they're all horrible and blah, blah, blah. So just let some of those go away. And Lana says, at what stage would I add tapioca flour? I think what I would do is then I would take this mixture, I'd heat it on the stove. I'd probably add an additional cup-ish of water. So you'd want it to be a little, not as thick as hummus. You'd want it to be a little bit thinner, because as the tapioca starch cooks, it's going to pull it together too and make it thicker. So at that point, this is too thick. So I would blend all of this together and then put it up. And I think, do I have the oil-free recipe on healthy slow cooking? Let me see if I do. If I do, it would be great to follow. But I don't know if no, I don't. Maybe I have it on. Sorry, if I have the recipe, I want to give it to you guys. No, I don't have it up at this point. I will at some point, or you could go to juliehasson.com, look up her cheeses, because she uses carrageenan, tapioca starch, and lactic acid. And it would be a similar process. You would not have to do the carrageenan for this because we're not trying to set it into something sliceable. But basically, as it gets warm, I would whisk it. And if you need to whisk some extra water in there as you go along, then do that. So that's what I would do. And Mike says, appreciate it, agree, the bags plus hard to place in the goodies. Yeah, I know. Well, and it's just, I want to like the bags so much because I really want to have reusable, resealable bags that work. But right now, I'm trying like 4 or 5 different ones because I want to have one to recommend to all of you guys because you asked me about them a lot. And right now, I'm just not comfortable with just one brand yet. Oh, and Hillary, wherever you are, what's happening is I'm actually going live 10 different places. And if you are in a place where not that many people are watching, you will only see your comments. But that's one of the reasons why I read the comments out too, is so that because we're all here together. And I see you, Hillary, and I'm glad you're here. And Vanita likes to use ball glass jars for soup storage in the freezer. And in fact, some of those jars actually will mark on the packaging that they are good for freezing. So if you're using a glass container, and same with this, but even more with something that's not quite as thick walled as this, is you want to make sure you leave some room for everything to expand. You don't want to fill it up to the very, very top as high as it'll go, or you will have an issue. And Marilyn says, Costco has a set of Pyrex glass snapware, and that's kind of what this is, actually. That's great, and she liked it so much, she got more sets, so that was awesome. And Lana says, thanks, this was great, can't wait to try this. It's so easy to make, you guys. And so, yeah. It's easy peasy. And so we're going to have some heated up air fried tofu. We're going to have some lightly toasted baguette, which I suspect is not behind me, but is downstairs. Just a reminder to everyone else, perhaps if you have a little white bread baguette, you need to pay a little more attention to it. I'm not used to having this like fancy, light, not much in it bread. So that just goes to show you we should be eating better bread. Right there. And Mike says, speaking of cheese, does your cheese class go over some sort of queso fresco, as I'm addicted to Mexican food? It has an amazing pub cheese in it that is to die for, and it lasts a long time. But if you want some queso, just go to plantbasedinstantpot.com, look up queso, I got you. I've got a cauliflower queso that uses a little bit of cashews. It does have some different Mexican chilies and things like that, but you can just use chili for the stew powder instead if you don't have all those little ingredients. I do love a little jalapeno powder in there because I think it gives it that brightness and kick. So it looks just like Velveeta, I swear. And there's another recipe on healthyslowcooking.com that's kind of like Torchy's queso that's made with potato, and then it has a guacamole and a sauce, like a rojo sauce that you make separately with guajillo chilies as well. Oh, Joanne, Joanne fell asleep. I'm glad you had a lovely nap. You obviously needed it. We're fondueing it. You missed the whole Tom Jones ski chalet setup, but you can watch it again later. And I'll give you another little, I don't know why this camera is just not focusing so good today. That's all right. So we've got a heap of it. It's just so easy to make. And let's say you want to make it now. If you've got a can of white beans, all you have to do is drain them. If you've got some almonds, I use the slivered skinless almonds. You could use any kind of almond you wanted. It's just not going to give you the same color, but you could boil whole almonds, skin them, so like boil them, put them in a strainer, run cold water over them. They just come right out of their skins, and then start this process too. That's something else you could do. If you have any kind of almonds, you could just either stick them in the microwave for a couple of minutes. You could put them on the stove top in some water, cook them for a little bit, let them sit, and then strain out while you prepare everything else. Oh, and Apple says, how about your pimento cheese fondue? Maybe Mike would like that. That is a great point, and you can get that at healthyslowcooking.com. That is one of my first recipes. That was my first fondue recipe ever. It uses a lot of Daiya cheese because Daiya was new then. So I've been thinking about doing an updated one that would be similar to this. And actually, you probably could do it with this. Maybe add I would puree in a couple of carrots to give it kind of a cheddar color. And then all you have to do is get jarred pimentos after you puree it and mix those in. And you could too have a pimento cheese fondue. Maybe add a little extra mustard powder to it maybe. And I think that would do it. And Helene says, do the almonds have to be skinned or boiled? Okay, they do have to be soaked or cooked in some manner so that they're going to be smooth enough in the Vitamix. I know the Vitamix is pretty powerful, But still, I think with almonds over cashews, almonds are such a harder nut. So cashews I will get away with just throwing in the Vitamix and still getting them pretty smooth, but we want this to be silky, silky smooth. So if you have some skins in there, it's not going to be as silky smooth. But if that's what you got and you don't feel like doing that other stuff, then go for it. That's what I say. You might have some little brown flecks in there from the skins. So try and scrape down and puree as much as you can. And Joanne said we had a fondue restaurant in Vermont that my son and his friends love to go to during skiing season. Oh, and Mike says, may I ask what pub cheese is? Sure. So I think it originated, at least where I'm from, in steakhouses, they'd have this kind of crock cheese. And sometimes it would be like port wine cheese, which you guys may remember, some of you who are old enough, from the 80s and maybe the 70s too. But so basically it's a spreadable kind of sharp cheddar cheese spread. And Miyoko makes a really nice Roadhouse pub cheese as well. And this one, this isn't as sharp, so that's a little more sharp and has a little bit more, I'm pretty sure I put some apple cider vinegar in it, as well as some of these same things, some lactic acid and things like that. That one does use, it's mainly cashews, so it's a treat food versus a dinnery food. Like it makes this look like super health food. Although I know for some of you, this is a lot of almonds to ask you to eat. And again, remember, we could try it by using some oat cream that we make at home with rolled oats instead of the nuts. It's not going to be perfectly creamy like it is now, but it could be really close. So if you were going to do it that way, I would maybe start with a half a cup of oats, 1 1/4 cup to 1 1/2 cups of water. I'd puree that down as smooth as you can get it. Then I would add the beans. I'm not worried about the oats getting slimy in this. So I know usually I say don't over blend the oats. We don't care. It's just if it gets a little slimy, it's just going to look like cheese. Like what Apple was saying about kind of using tapioca starch and having it stretch. So that's just a bonus. It's kind of like okra. When you make okra in gumbo, it's a bonus that the okra thickens things. Okay, awesome. Do you guys have any other questions before I go have my extravagant 70s dinner? I'm trying to think. You could also do things like steamed broccoli, steamed cauliflower, any kind of veggies. So you could totally do this as a whole food plant-based meal and not use any bread at all. You could do tofu. You could actually do some air-fried soy curls to dip in there. If you had some seitan cubes, that would work really well. We're actually going to slice up some apples. I didn't do that because I didn't want you to see them browning before your very eyes. You could do apples and pears, go really well with this. Yep, and Joanne says, we used to put a Swiss German liqueur in the fondue. And that's what I was saying earlier. Like if you look at the melting pot menu, like there is some liqueurs or liquors or things that they put in, which is kind of interesting. So you could take this base recipe and turn it into something else for sure and like fancy it up as much as you wanted to. Oh, and Apple used to put, do you guys know what the name of the liqueur was? And was it like more of like a brandy or was it more of a flavored liqueur of some kind? Cherry, kirsch, that's it. So it was a cherry liqueur. I do have a maraschino cherry liqueur over on the bar that I might smell with it and see what I think. Because that could be interesting. I think it would be really interesting with like some port wine in there or a little bit of brandy. I think that also could take that kind of darker cheese flavor just a little bit further in our faux version. But what's really good is if you're making a chocolate fondue, is to add like, you know, an orange liqueur, frangelico, or something like that, just a little bit. And so in fact, when I used to live in Brooklyn for a couple of years, the only time I went to the liquor store was to get the little bottles of liqueur when I was baking. They used to make such fun of me. I can tell you that now. And that was, yeah, oh, the 70s is what Joanna says. I know, and I'm feeling it. I'm feeling like we might have to turn back on some Tom Jones. I just need what were those things? They were like long, dressy house dresses. I'm trying to think of what the name, there's a name for them, and I can't think of it right now. And I know some of you guys were waiting for the Christmas cactus to bloom, and look at that, you guys. In case you missed the lovely Christmas cactus. Beer is something that's good in fondue too. Hard cider would be good in there, so that would give a little bit of the sweetness that the cherry liqueur would, but I think it would give it a little bit of, again, a darker flavor. Mimi, moo-moo, that's it, it was a moo-moo, right? Because like they were a thing, I think. In the 70s, I was not very old, but I was definitely in existence. Yeah, and there were like those long dresses and the slits up, and then the hair was piled up with those big scarf hairbands. It was so groovy. A caftan, that's it, it was a caftan. Thank you very much, Vanetta. That's what I was trying to think. Because like when you say house coat now, you think of somebody's in the little zip up thing, like I've been threatening to get. But my fuzzy Christmas pajamas are doing me good so far. Yeah, caftan. I know, so I wish I could show pictures out of my brain to you guys so you could see how cool it was when we did have the fondue party. We had our little Tom Collins and everybody had their like groovy patterned clothes on. And then we had a nice fondue with a lot of different things, and we had a nice chocolate fondue. But the moral of this live is it's easy to make vegan fondue. Again, we talked a little bit about this vegan lactic acid. You can get that on Amazon. Druid Grove does it from sugar beets. There are some other ones that you can get too. You don't have to have it to make this. I think honestly the miso and the dry mustard does a pretty good job. It kind of takes a vegan cheese from here to here, if that makes sense. So it just takes a little bit further. It gives it a little bit more grounded in reality cheese flavor. So take that for what it's worth. However, if I were you and I didn't have any and I saw me make this, I'd be making it anyhow. And that's why Helena's, I know, doesn't have all the ingredients. And there's no reason you couldn't make it with something else. Also, feel free to add water to make it thinner as it cools down. So that's something you can do too. Okay, retro fondue party sounds fun, says Jackie. Yeah, I know, I can't wait. That's going to be one of the first, like after the pandemic, I think I need a fondue party. So, and Joanne said they were really big in the 60s. My parents had those parties when NASA was big time. I know, it just, and the last time I actually caught a Tom Jones concert and recorded it on like HBO or something. So it was like the last concert he's done in the past 10 or 15 years. It was so awesome. So, oh yeah. And Joanne said there was lots of drinking and driving in those days. And yes, there was lots of things going on in the 70s that we shall not speak of. But fondue is a great thing that came out of it. And honestly, Harvest Gold, as long as it's not in a refrigerator, is one of my close friends too. A little avocado for our screen. We kind of have our own little modernist house, so we kind of do a little bit of modernist coloring in here. You can see the gold, and we've got some brick and we do have an avocado color in one of the bathrooms too, which is kind of cool. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's been a pleasure. If you have some questions, let me know. Somewhere around, depending on where you're watching, there's a link to the base recipe for a small slow cooker. Again, and I would just put this in a pan and warm it up, or I can warm it up in the microwave. It's all up to whatever you feel like doing. So, you know, you don't have to have a slow cooker. It's nice to have a slow cooker because it keeps it warm, but we're going to turn on the sterno and be exciting. Ooh, and Jackie said she might still have a fondue set that's packed away. Excellent, you guys. Have an amazing, amazing night. Dream of caftans, Tom Jones, and fondue, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.